What's going on, everybody? This is the Common Threads podcast, episode number 6, with the first ever guest that we've had on here, Corey Diethorn. And Corey has been a great friend of mine for the last 15 years or so by now. And I was really excited to have Corey on here because him and I started entrepreneurial life pretty close to the same time. And, we've shared battle stories together. We still do, and we talk about the ups and downs and everything in between that, you can't really share with everybody because they just don't understand what it's like and what it takes and kind of the hiccups and headaches that you go through. So it's always, in any business, any situation, it's always good to have somebody that you can really bounce things off and talk to because it's such a lonely, dark road. When you're going through building a business and, you don't have a blueprint, you don't have, the guidance to get there, and you're in the startup stages, you're figuring out who you could trust, who you can't trust. It's great to share stories because you end up learning from other people, and all businesses run the same or similar. So, the horror stories tend to be similar experiences from people. So, Corey, I appreciate you being here, man. It's really cool to see what you've done. It's fun to see the growth that you've had, and I appreciate the friendship and just appreciate you being on here, man.
Yeah, thanks. It's an honor. First guest. That's good to be. It's good to be.
Absolutely, man. So I guess just for everybody that's out there listening to what we're doing, a lot of the times we just try to give pearls of advice to people. We want to make sure that the listeners that we have following along are really able to get take-homes that they can implement into their business, their life, their day-to-day opportunities in what they're doing. And it could be that they're not a business owner. It could be that they're trying to become a better employee, a better teammate, or they're just dabbling with something on the side. And just like you and I faced the decision, when is the right time to jump into this full go? So kind of give us just an overview. You don't have to go into crazy detail. I'm going to pick your brain on some of the questions. I have some things that I want to ask you already. But just kind of give everybody your background about who you are, what you've done, and where you've gone to today, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm from Pittsburgh originally, and I played basketball and in high school, and then went up to Division II college in Massachusetts and had a successful career there. And a lot of parallels between business and sports. Just working hard, getting better. That self-reflection that takes to really look at yourself and understand what you need to improve to get to the next level. And I was fortunate enough, and I did networked, and I worked hard, and I went overseas and played professionally for about three and a half years. My first year was semi-pro. I got a master's degree in England.
While you were overseas? While
I was overseas playing. We played like 50 games. It was crazy. It's a different sort of setup they have over there. So we played 50 games in a season, and I studied in England. I was there for about 10 months. Came back to the States for a month. I was working on my dissertation. Got a pro contract in the Canary Islands in Spain. And it wasn't big money. It's almost comparable to like minor league baseball here, where there's levels, and some guys are making high 6 figures, 7 figures, and then there's guys that they're almost semi-pro teams. I was on an all-pro team and an all-pro league, but just being over there and then coming back, and I played there for 2 years, and it a lot of self-reflection over there because you're just hooping. Like there wasn't much else. Like I woke up, I worked out, and then we had practice at night, and then we had games. So really, I analyzed what makes me happy, sort of. And when I came back to the States, it was sort of like, what do I want to do?
How old were you when you came back?
I was 25 or 20. Yeah, like 25.
And you went right after college?
Yeah, I went right after college to 22? You graduated college, I was there. Yeah, 25, 26. And like I had no money. Like I wasn't making a lot hooping. And it was a lifestyle by design is what I wanted to build. And I started to read a lot about, just entrepreneurial books. Rich Dad, Poor Dad got me going, thinking about real estate.
That was your first?
That was sort of like the first book I started reading that made me realize there were a couple of people. My mom's friend had some rental properties. And I'm like, I remember, I look back at my journals, and I even wrote about them. Like, they have 14 rental properties. Like,
yep.
That's pretty cool. How did they do that? And when I came back, I started looking at like buying a duplex, and I'm like, someone bought it cash, 50 grand. They just came in and bought this house cash, and I like didn't even know how a mortgage really worked.
It was the same one you were looking at.
The same house I was looking at, and they came in. This guy from New Jersey bought it, 50 grand cash. Boom. I'm like, how does someone even have that much cash to buy a house? Like, It kind of blew my mind. So then I got a job working at a consulting company doing business development for them, and it just wasn't a good fit, and I hated it, and like they weren't really training me. So I said, I'm going to do this real estate thing. So I left there, and I got a job.
How long were you there before?
Like 6 months, like not even, nothing crazy, right? And I got a job doing cold calling for 30 hours a week that kind of paid my bills, and it was just serious, just smiling and dialing, hitting those phones, like getting leads and passing them off. And then all my other time, I was like hustling to get a house and to buy a house. And I bought the first house, we renovated it, I sold it, bought the second house, renovated it, we sold it. And that was the last house I bought and sold. And in parallel too, I got my real estate license. And then just, I kind of, the real estate license, I didn't want to be an agent per se, but it was just sort of, I was like, I'm actually kind of good at this. And, it just kind of snowballed from there.
So you started selling houses in the beginning?
Yeah. So I was selling houses. So it was like 80-20 or maybe even 90-10. I was a realtor. And then I was buying a couple houses here and there to work on. And, I was selling, and pretty much since I started doing real estate, I sell typically between 3 and 4 million a year in sales on the realtor side, which, I'm not number one producer, but I also I have a different kind of model, right? Like that's my day job. I look at it as, and at the time, I mean, even those commissions I was making was pouring into my business
so taking that and reinvesting that into
into the other business, and like I started out, I bought a duplex. She was not my wife at the time, but my wife and I lived upstairs, had a tenant downstairs, bought another house, renovated that house.
So let me stop you on the duplex side. And I'm not an expert in real estate. I hear that as a common direction or a common path, or a lot of mentors or friends of mine that are successful in the real estate game always talk about, hey, a great starting spot is to get into a duplex, obvious for reasons of someone else covering the nut on the house, right?
Right. Yeah.
What's the overall theory in your opinion, or why is that the right move, or what's your general thought on that?
I mean, I'm a big fan of it. Like, would I want to live in a duplex now? I have 2 young kids. Like, no. But when I was in my mid to late 20s, like, it was you were at that spot. Like, we redid it. It was cool. And like, I mean, I think my mortgage on that house is $800. I had a 1-bedroom apartment down below that was paying $600. So literally it was $200 a month that I had to pay to live in this nice crib. And like, I rent that place out for $1,200, $1,300 a month now. So, I would have just been throwing that money away. So essentially I have $1,000 gain by staying in that place. That's $12,000 a year. And it's good too to learn, like, if you want to pursue this, because being a landlord and owning rental properties isn't necessarily for everyone.
Right.
So it's kind of a good way to dip your toes in the water. I think it's great for younger people, single people, don't really have kids, like, if they're interested in it. It just makes sense. The numbers just work, because you can buy a pretty nice duplex for what you're buying a pretty nice house for. And, if you get the right one, you might not even pay any to your mortgage. Like, you might have rent for $1,200 and, your mortgage is $900. So you might be making $300 a month. So
that's something that, everybody out there and on my side of things, I was 25, 26. Actually, I was 24 when I bought my first house, and it was a single family home. It was almost similar. I mean, my mortgage was $550. It was a $60,000 house. I put $20,000 into the house. My roommate paid me $550 a month. It was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
So I was 24 living on my own, and I was paying $200 a month in that. And so a lot of the times too, what I notice is, especially in Pittsburgh, you see a lot of these apartment complexes popping up, and you see, $1,500, $1,700, $2,000, $2,500 a month of a price tag for that. And what I always try to encourage people is, and I live my life differently than a lot of people, and just like anybody, but to be strategic about your finances at an earlier age, and now we're in our mid-30s now, and you look at really where that benefit, probably the multiplier on that could be 3, 4, 5 times what you're able to save, and then reinvest that money into another opportunity or another situation, which is the cool thing about that. So a lot of the times people need to put their egos on the side and care less about what other people are doing, because someone may say, on the outside, hey, you're living in a duplex and you have someone else that lives next to you or whatever. And okay, cool. Well, you're wasting $1,500 a month on that when you're getting no equity, you're getting no return. And now that leads you to the effect of all the other beautiful things that you have going on in the real estate game. I would assume a lot in part because not only just the money that you saved, the education that you received while doing that, not just education on rental properties, but also life and understanding how money works differently, strategy works differently to get to that next level in business. And it gives you an investment for the long term.
Yeah, no, I mean, it still pays me. I actually converted that first floor apartment. It's just a little 1-bedroom spot, and I did my first Airbnb there, and it was one of the coolest things. We redid it. I posted it. I did my whole thing, got the photography done and everything, furnished, put it on Airbnb, and every time my phone blinked, it was like money.
Yep.
And somebody just booked, and it's like it was a crazy feeling to see that, because with the rents coming in, it's not the same as getting a ping on your phone that's just, it's coming in. So, and then, that opened my world up to Airbnb and short-term rentals. And I converted the upstairs unit to that now. And now we have, I think it's 16 Airbnbs or 16 are going to be coming online in the next, or a couple more coming online in the next few months. And I mean, it was Airbnb and short-term rentals were a game changer for me.
And you hit that at the timing where...
Yeah, I mean, that was I think 3 years ago now. And, we've expanded from apartments. We have single-family houses. We just all over. And it's great. And it's a different business than the rental business. It's definitely more customer service focused. You have to be on top of it. I joke sometimes to people about it. Like when a tenant calls me and says their light bulb's out, I tell them to change it.
Yep.
And when a guest calls me and tells me the light bulb's out, I'm like, okay, I'll be right over.
Yeah. So that's actually really interesting too. And that's something that me on an outsider that I'm not in that world, I don't understand that. I had 2 girls that lived in my house, house that I had when I was 24 or whatever. I lived there for a couple years, had 2 sisters move in there, and they were absolutely fucking incredible to be there. It was the luck of the draw, the right people. I never had to chase them down for anything. But one time I was flying to Chicago, and I remember I was getting ready to take off. I'm on the tarmac, and one of the sisters texted me, and she's like, "Hey, the garbage disposal, there's an issue. It's making a noise." And she's like, it's filling up or whatever. I said, okay, don't do anything. I'm going to be landing in an hour. And so then I landed, and I remember I get a text from her, and she's like, hey, everything went down. It's good. I said, okay, don't put anything in there. I'll be back in a couple of days. I'll come and take a look at it to see what's going on. Well, not only an hour later, I get another text that she turned it on and there was a fork or something stuck in there. And it was $180 fix, which it's probably a $20. There's probably a less expensive way to do it.
Yeah.
But I had to call Southside Plumbing or someone like that, pay the fee, do all this other stuff. over somebody just not listening to some simple direction.
Right.
Talk to me about some of the headaches, hiccups that you have in one, you don't have in the other, rentals versus Airbnb, or they're all pretty much, working around your everyday.
They're similar. Like, I don't put garbage disposals in my properties for that reason.
Okay, makes sense.
Like, just because it's another maintenance thing. So I try to make it like as foolproof as I can while I'm going. Like, my model is I'm buying undervalued houses that need work. Like, I like smelly houses. Like, I like houses that are like beat up and like, someone was a hoarder. Like, we're wrapping up this house in the north side right now. It cost me $6,000 just to get the guy's stuff out of it. Like, and
That's
it was
so crazy.
It was 3,000 square foot house of just like fake plants and just like weird stuff. And that's when I see that, most people run away from that, right? Like, I run to it because that's where I make my money and that's where I add the value. Is I saw this beautiful house hiding behind all this stuff. But back to your point, I'm trying to eliminate anything that can go wrong. Like, obviously there are variables that happen. Like, we're putting a new water tank in, we're replumbing stuff. We're changing shutoff valves that potentially could leak. Because that's ultimately like the worst thing that can happen in a house is water damage, or one of the worst, right? With the Airbnbs, we have active. It's more passive with the rentals. You show it to a tenant, they like it. It's an empty house. They put the utilities in their name, and honestly, they send the rent check in once a month. Maybe there's a minor issue that comes up that we got to get a plumber out there, an electrician to do something every once in a while. But with Airbnbs, there's people coming and going every weekend. We have, like I said, 15 or 16. So every weekend, pre-pandemic, it was like Fridays were crazy, Sundays are crazy too, because everyone's checking out after the weekend. So just being available too is one of those things, because with the tenants, it's not as necessary that you're always by your phone. Airbnb, someone could be checking in at 10 o'clock on a Friday night and, your phone's off and they can't access the code and they can't figure out what's going on. And now they're stuck out in the cold on a Friday night. So that's sort of the difference of the two.
And then you have to risk your name being on the line, right?
Yeah. It's all about the reviews, maintaining high. I think I have like 350 or 400 reviews. We're like high 4.7, 4.8
out of 5.
And that's the key. Like, if those people need something, I'm there to do it. And you can't make everyone happy all the time. People have different expectations. They're coming from different places. They don't know what Pittsburgh's like, most of my places are Mount Washington, so like it's just one of those things. They're coming from a real rural suburban place, and Mount Washington is not that. It's an urban city neighborhood
with hills and small roads.
Yeah, some Yinzers like mad because they took their parking spot and they get yelled at and like they blame me, and it's like I don't have control of that. Yeah. But so that's like the ups and downs with it. But I like the with Airbnb, I like the design that goes into it. I like furnishing these places. I like hosting the people in the city and like telling them spots to go that are my spots. So it is nice, and it's nice just to have some houses if friends come into town. Like, hey, you can stay at the spot. Do
you like the difference in the scheme? Do you have a preference over the rental Airbnb? Is one more profitable than the other? Or do you like doing one more than the other? Do you like the engagements, experiences one over the other? Or is it pretty much, look, they're all under your portfolio. They all feel the same to me. I'm cool with whatever.
With the Airbnbs or short-term rentals, like they're more profitable, but there is more work that goes into it. Like I have more management. I have to make sure that the cleaners are there, and I have to make sure that we're taking the trash out. Like at a rental, we don't have to do that. Like the tenants take their trash out. So every Thursday, my guy goes around. Ken, he goes around to all the houses and takes all the trash out. And on Friday mornings, he drives around all the houses and pulls all the cans in from the street. So which, even though more profitable, you're spending more money for the upkeep, you're spending more money for the experience.
and customer service in today's day and age is it will make or break a business. I don't care how big of a business or how small of a business you are, other than like Comcast, because they obviously don't care about anybody. But it's customer service, reviews, technology has enhanced your business immensely as well. And that's the one thing that, even though this is a different market than I'm in or a different market than anybody else, the things that you need to take from that, and I would attest probably why you're successful in this, is customer service probably plays a really big role in that. It
does. And I mean, there's risks in both of them too. Like with the Airbnbs, like if you don't have the bookings with the pandemic, the calendars got cleared. They were wiped out, and Airbnb, to save their name, refunded all the guests. Well, Airbnb is a 3-party platform, right? You have the guest, you have the host, and you have Airbnb, and everyone's interests are slightly different in this thing. And Airbnb made a decision to take care of the guests a little more than the hosts, right? Because I mean, you have bookings. It was in March last year, right? It was Friday the 13th, basically, and I had bookings. I was like, man, this is going to be a good summer. Like, I'm booked up. April was booked up. May's booked up. June's starting to get some bookings. So, I'm doing projections. I'm planning business off of those numbers. And then, boom, it's all wiped out, which, there's always a lesson to learn when things like this happen. And, it showed me, to be a little more nimble, to adjust my pricing a little bit, to kind of, it's a art and a science. So it showed me the 1-bedrooms might be better suited for longer term stays, like, because you can only max out revenue on a 1-bedroom apartment because you get a couple coming in for a weekend getaway, and you're competing with a hotel at that price point. So you can't really, you have to have that differentiator. So you undercut the hotel a little bit, but you only have 4 weekends. So you max out that revenue and hope you get someone coming in for work. Where now it's like there's a demand for people who need a place for 30 days. They're a traveling nurse. They're doing an internship. And I don't have the turnover. I don't have that expense of the cleaner going there 5 times. You got to pay a cleaner a minimum to even though it might take them 20 minutes to do 1 bedroom. Like, you can't throw them $10.
Right.
Like, you got to make it worth their while to go there. So that taught me that, and it was good. And I saw too that the calendars were open, and luckily I got construction crews coming in from out of town. A lot of those, like,
they're coming into Pittsburgh
to do things like, I have a client that he has a solar crew. They put solar panels up in Pittsburgh, and they're from Philly, and they come twice a month, and they stay on a Monday and they leave on a Friday. And that's great for me because now I still have my weekend bookings open. And these dudes are coming in, and it's a win-win for him. He doesn't have to buy 4 hotel rooms. He has all his guys in a nice house. And, so I during the pandemic, those type of things became apparent to me, and I saw them, which was good,
So, obviously for our business, pandemic shook things up immensely. We lost almost 100% of revenue. I think April we did $1,500 in sales, from six figures a month. And I know you start really looking at things initially when I was like, okay, for the first 2 weeks, whatever, if we have a shitty month, it's not the end of the world. Everything's going to be fine. But, I'm sure by the end of April, everything's going to be good. We're going to be back to going selling suits. Perfect in time for the springtime, in time for the summer, wedding season, all that stuff. So talk to me a little bit too about, obviously you had to change and you had to start seeing things. And I think, this is one of those things that I don't know if all entrepreneurs or people looking to get into the entrepreneurial world really have a good grasp or an understanding on it, that you can't look at a situation and find the negative in it, right? Everything you have to do is, here's the situation, assess the situation, think about the past that you've been in business, think about experiences you've had, how you've overcome things, and now think about, hey, I have this new obstacle that I've never seen before happen. And really, this is the craziest thing that we've seen since 100 years ago, right? And none of us were around for that. So talk to us about how in an industry that is in the entertainment world, in the travel world, which is a lot of my business as well, I mean, how do you survive April, May, June, July, those first half of the pandemic, before you get a grasp on what's actually happening? Did these people randomly call you, hey, we're a construction crew, we're coming in, or?
Well, luckily the calendars were open, and I've dropped my pricing, and I really got into some of the nitty gritty of what you can do pricing wise and how you adjust things, because I had my formula. It was working well for me. You know, I'd tweak things here or there, but this took my full focus, you know? And so I adjusted that pricing that was a little more attractive for those people.
Did you have somebody mentoring you for that, or were you
Honestly,
just trial and error?
I was trial and error, and like, I mean, I always seek expert advice wherever I kind of can, whether it's on a YouTube or a podcast or whatever. And like, I found this guy who was running a crazy Airbnb business, and he was putting out content. And I remember I was sitting in my basement watching it and taking notes, like for 3 or 4 days in a row on like how he did some of his pricing strategy. And, you know, I implemented those in my business, and you know, for the most part, we were treading water, which is what
you had to do. That
like I was happy to do that, you know. And then the fundamentals of what I do, like I always when I look at a deal or I look at a potential Airbnb, for me, I'm not overstepping and over leveraging. I'm making sure, okay, does this work as an Airbnb? Yes, it does. Does this work as a long-term rental if Airbnb goes away? Because Airbnb's you know, they're shaking things up. They're kind of in the gray area. It's a new business. The laws haven't necessarily caught up. You know, in some markets in the world, yeah, there's restriction on it. In Pittsburgh, we don't have it.
Did you think for a second that Airbnb was going to be in some substantial trouble?
I wasn't sure. I was hopeful that it would stay afloat, you know. Yep. But the worst case scenario for me is I got to sell 10 houses full of furniture at the thrift store, and I convert these back to rentals.
Yeah.
You know, and luckily my portfolio is at least balanced enough where the rental could have covered the expenses from not having the Airbnbs. Like it would have hurt. It would have hurt bad, you know, but we would have been all right. Luckily, the Airbnbs kind of bounced back, and they operated it, you know, a little better than break even, or you know, a little bit of profit. Yeah. But that's the underlying thing when I'm looking at deals and thinking about Airbnbs. That okay, can this thing rent out? If Airbnb goes away tomorrow, can I still make money with it as a rental or a long-term rental? And you know, that's the number one criteria when I'm looking at something.
Yeah. So I think in business, right, everybody's goal on an annual basis is let's increase revenue from last year. But there are also situations that do present themselves, whether it's you're in a manufacturing business and you have an issue that the factory burns down, or the line gets shut down for a month, and then you know now you're playing catch up for the rest of the year. So now you're worried that the year isn't going to turn into what it is or what it could have been. How I looked at the pandemic and how that kind of affected our business was this was a year for us to learn, grow, and tread water. Mm-hmm. How do I make sure that the pandemic didn't cause me to lose my business and my life and everything I put into this? So I think that's such a powerful thing is in business this year showed us that nobody's invincible from things that can happen, and the most wild, outlandish things that could potentially happen. So a couple schools of thought. Number one, you talk to some people, and my dad's generation typically, or my dad's not an entrepreneur, but that generation and how they think of things. My dad has always been one that says, hey, put money away for a rainy day, right? I've never put money away for a rainy day because as a business owner, you can't. That extra money that you have has to stay liquid or in some capacity or constantly being reinvested into your business. So I think that's something too that's really powerful for people that are trying to become in the business world is you have to really trust yourself more than anybody, and you have to trust yourself that you can make things work and that you'll figure it out. You know, when we started our business, you know, I think at one point we had to do 40,000 roughly a month to break even. That was kind of our threshold. And then it's like, okay, we did $110,000 this month. Then that month ends, and now it's day number 1.
Yeah.
that we don't have reoccurring revenue in the suit business or the
Right,
clothing world.
right.
So you have to just trust that it's going to work out. And it, for whatever reason, even at the darkest times, it seems like it worked out. And I don't know if that's pure luck. I don't know if that's putting myself in a position to be lucky. I think talk a little bit about that from a standpoint of there's a lot of people in real estate now. There's a lot of people that I think this conversation can really help. It's opening my eyes to some things. I have a fascination with rental properties, Airbnb, and our relationship. You're very transparent with me about things. So it's made me understand the opportunity there. So talk about your experience from the mental side of that and getting through something that could be mean the end of your business potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky now. I'm 7 to 8 years into it, and I'm established. 3 or 4 years ago, at the beginning, I was running like cowboy P&Ls on my notebook to make sure, like, okay, I have this many mortgages coming in or that are due. I have these bills going out. I got the guy. I'm actively doing construction all the time. Like, we have 4 or 5 projects going right now.
On your properties?
Like I'm buying these houses, I'm renovating them, and then I'm renting them out is sort of the model, whether it's Airbnb or long-term rentals. So the numbers can be sizable. It's construction's expensive, kitchens are expensive, mortgages are expensive every month, especially if you're carrying 3 of them that aren't producing. So I remember like sitting at Plymouth Street and just doing my P&L to make sure, okay, I got this much going out, I got this much coming in. What's not going to get paid this month, And like, I was balancing on 0. Like, okay, there's 10 coming in, but there's 12 that got to go out. Like, who's going to get shorted? And like, the last person I would short would be the crew and my guys. Like, I'm making sure that they're paid right when they need it. And, sometimes I didn't pay a credit card, or I didn't, pay my tax bill a little late, or Duquesne Light only charges 1% late fee, so Duquesne Light's not getting paid. They're not shutting my lights off yet,
and they can't shut your power off in the wintertime. So that's a good tip.
So like, but I was confident in what I was doing. Like, I was like, this, I just got to keep pushing through this to turn the corner. And I have my business set up in kind of different LLCs, and it's crazy because the first LLC I started is stable and it's profitable, and it's like the big brother now to this next one I'm started. I just started it last year, and it's growing, but like, it's balancing almost on 0, right? And it's nice that I have that safety net of the first one to say, okay, if my cash flow is a little tight, I can kind of lend it a couple $1,000 if I need to, right? But 5 years ago, I didn't have that,
right?
It was, and it's cool to see that, that transition and that growth to say like, okay, I know where this business is right now because my profitable LLC was there 4 or 5 years ago. So let me just keep going. And that's one of the beauties of it, is you just keeping going, and knowing your numbers is important, and outlining a plan and knowing where you want to get. Because with me, there becomes scalability. Like, once you hit a certain number of properties, one of the best things I did was outsource my bookkeeping just on the daily, like, got that off of my plate and allowed me to focus on, the value creation that I can bring. And now I'm starting I have the Baby Brother LLC, and I do all the bookkeeping on it, and I'm better now because I understand what I went through and how it screwed me up. And I'm just like, hey, every Monday I'm just making sure everything's where it needs to be. And I have the transparency in my numbers that I'm not scribbling down my cash flow in my notebook. It's in my QuickBooks. I can see it. I can see like where the chunks of money are going, what houses they're going to, am I on my budgets, all those things. That it's just the growth that I've seen in the last few years that allowed me to grow as an entrepreneur and see those things,
Yeah, and that's so when I started, I was very bad at the books. And I remember my dad always says, you got to know your numbers, you got to know your numbers. And my argument was, if I don't have a brand, it doesn't matter. And in 2017 is when I switched over to my accountant that I've had since then. And he has worked with me on a monthly basis to redirect the direction of the ship. And if we would have continued to go down the path, even though our revenue, we're growing at 40% every single year, we were going to fail. And that's kind of scary, is even though you had a successful, profitable business in the scheme of the direction you were going, you had to make the margins greater in order for me to survive personally and also the business to survive. And I'm actually going through I'm in the tail end of an audit right now from 2017 that it was up to about $450,000 that they're claiming that I had additional income, which is substantial.
Yeah.
And I thankfully have everything documented. There's a couple things that I have to really figure out how to get this done, but that bookkeeping from the beginning stages of business, I strongly encourage every business person to know your numbers right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. It simplifies your headaches down the road. It will be an immense strain off of your back to know where the numbers are coming. And then talking a little bit about like the credit cards and things like that. I did national debt relief on my credit years ago. And I think I had 3 credit cards. One was 18,000 maxed out. One was 7,000. One was 12,000. And I had that conversation, the same thing that you probably had with yourself was, okay, here's where I am. Here's the money I have coming in. I'm paying my mortgage. I'm paying my car. They can't take my house if I don't pay my credit card.
Right.
I have to pay my mortgage. I have to pay my car. I need a vehicle.
Right.
So I just made a business decision. I was like, I can pay these credit cards off. It's going to take forever, and I'm going to pay X amount more than I really need to. Or I just bought a house. I have a car. It's new. It's going to last me. Fuck the credit cards. I'll ruin my credit because the money that I'm paying on a monthly basis to my credit cards that's going to take forever to get out, I can now reinvest that money into my business. And then my guess was in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, which is where we are now, I'm going to be in a better spot and I'm not going to have to worry about that. And now my credit's great, business is great, and I saved probably $50,000 in additional fees, additional cost, and I'd probably still be chipping my way away for another 10 years.
Yeah.
And that was just, living stupid at a younger age, not realizing that. But also, I did well financially. And then whenever I lost my job, right before I lost my job, I paid a $110,000 student loan, paid that off. I built a $500,000 house, so I put money into that. And then a year later, I lost my job.
Yeah.
So I had no money, no income. So why I want to share that is because you just figure shit out.
You do.
And you have to, because I'm assuming the things that you've learned along the way, it doesn't matter how many YouTube videos you would have watched or podcasts you would have listened to, you don't understand it until you're in it, facing it, right? And understanding that, okay, it's going to suck when I do national debt relief. They even warned me, hey, you're going to get harassed. And I got calls from 7 a.m. until 9:30 p.m.
Yep.
And it was some of the nastiest conversations. And that bothered me for a couple days. And then I realized, just hang up the phone. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the mental battle is very difficult.
It is. And I mean, that's what you learn over business too. It's like, at the end of the day, you're not getting hurt. Like, people aren't truly getting hurt physically. There's like, you have to get that thick skin to understand like what's going to happen, like, and to understand like there will be tomorrow, and the lessons that you learn in business, like they prepare you for the hard times, and like you always have those things that you learned to go back on. And if you fail, like you fail forward and you keep growing, and you just get back right on that horse and keep working. And that's the most important thing, like every day. And for me, it's like I'm working on my business and I'm the business owner, and everything I do is bettering me and my business. When people are employees, like I just can't get my head around it. The 9 to 5 thing and getting a paycheck and clocking in and clocking out. Like, I'm constantly thinking about my business. I'm constantly talking to people about it. How can I do different things? Hey, what are you doing? People are asking me what I'm doing, and it's just that I'm in it. I'm living it. I'm breathing it, and I love it. But those hardships are what allow you to, when you hit them again, they're not as bad.
Because you're going to hit them again.
Yeah, like we were just talking before the show, the deal that I was planning on didn't go through for me. So now the ripple effect in my business, and yeah, it sucks, but I'm gonna get through it. Like, yeah, it's gonna slow my timing down a little bit, but like, what am I gonna do? Stop?
Right.
Like, it's not like I can't. Right. That would be the end of it. You know?
And every time you and I get together, I don't know how many times we've ever shared a good story.
Yeah.
Right. It's, dude, I just had this happen, or I just had this, or last week was the first week since I've started my business that I was able to put my bills on auto pay. Think about it, 35 years old. After, when I was in medical sales was different. I was doing well. I just was lazy and didn't do it then. But I just wanted to make sure that money wasn't leaving my account unless I said, you can leave my account now. Because I know they're not going to tap into my account and just steal the money. So I didn't want to risk where, oh shit, we had a shitty month and then all of a sudden my mortgage is out, this is out, or that's out. So I said, okay, cool. I'll deal with it. Now I'm okay. This is, here we are. So now you start building and going off the experiences that you've had before, and other things are going to pop up, hiccups, headaches, things that you don't anticipate happening, or, hey, that happened to me in the past. I know how to deal with it. It's not that bad. It's going to piss me off for an hour or 20 minutes or 10 minutes, or I'm not even going to worry about it because it's just annoying and a nuisance, but that's part of business.
Right.
And that's a lot of the things that people don't see as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as somebody that's leading the decisions or direction of a company, whether it's 1,000 employees, 10,000 employees, 2 employees, or 20 employees, it doesn't matter. You really earn your stripes as the one that makes the decisions that dictate the trickle-down effect on top of that. And you made a great point before. How you said it didn't matter about the credit cards and other things. Your team is what got paid all the time.
Yeah.
And that's something that I never ever let slide was, hey, if we're getting into a financial situation, same as you, like my team is getting paid. Mm-hmm. I was okay with not paying myself because I already knew I signed up for the long term. This is going to be my career. This is going to be my life. For 3 years or 5 years, my credit went to dog shit. I don't care. I'm confident in enough that I will be able to build this back to where I want to go.
Yeah, 100%. And like that's what it's about,
How much has the business and the journey that you've been through, have you noticed any personal growth, or the way you look at life, the way you conduct your everyday self? Where is that entrepreneurial value that you've gained through all this impacted your personal life?
I mean, it's important, I think, as a business owner to sometimes take that step back and not always be on, like, because it's very easy to get caught up in your business 100% of the time, and you need to have the success. But now I'm kind of, hopefully, I believe, turning the corner with my business where I can start getting back into like some leisurely activities and some hobbies. And my relationships are important with my family, my wife, my kids, my friends. My physical fitness is important. My mental is important. So growth there. I've always been pretty self-reflective throughout my life, especially once I was done hooping, because I had a lot of downtime there, and I was living in a beautiful place. And I did self-reflect a lot, and being able to self-reflect and hold yourself accountable, like, did I go to the gym this week? And the hardest part is getting there. And once you're there and afterwards, you're like, man, why did I even doubt that I should have been here? And so that aspect is important to me, and those different facets of my life are important to not 100% all of the time be on business wise, but making sure, I have other interests that I could talk to people about. So that's important for me, and I'm self-reflective of those things, especially now in the last year. I mean, with the pandemic, the phone stopped ringing on the realtor sales when they shut down.
Right.
So I had a lot of downtime, and, my kids didn't have daycare. So I got to spend a lot of time with my kids and just adjusting my perspective with my kids and it gives me more fulfillment in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. This is honestly, since the pandemic, it forced me to slow down too. And I think it was the first 12 days of the pandemic when everything was completely shut down. I went from 80 hours a week to like watching Netflix. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is nice. And then towards the tail end of that, I was like, this kind of sucks. Like, I want to get back to it. And it was cool from a mental reset standpoint. But, I'm now at a point where if I want to do something, I do it. If it's noon and I want to do it, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. If it's a weekend and I want to take time with somebody, I'm going to do that. And I've earned that right, just like you have. But that wasn't the case for the first couple years.
No.
How many times did you miss going to a bachelor party or an event or a wedding or this or that or a dinner or drinks with friends, especially at that age and when late 20s when it was starting.
Right.
I gave up a lot, just as you did. And another point that you made was the mental aspect of it and the physical aspect of it. Going to the gym is I don't like it. I don't want to get up every day at 6 o'clock now. I meditate for 15 minutes. I just started implementing this year. And then I actually stretch every single day, even if I don't go to the gym. And I never realized how beneficial that was. From a routine standpoint, consistency, staying on top of things, but also how much better I feel about my personal self, my life, my future. And, so it becomes one of those things where my routine is this. Would I rather sleep until 8 o'clock? Of course. Do I want to go to the gym and lift heavy weights and work out? No, I don't. I'd rather not. I'd rather eat pizza. I'd rather do all this other stuff. And, so that's why I think the discipline and self-discipline is so important, because I remember there were times on a Sunday night where I would drive 45 to 50 minutes to this guy's house for 2.5 years when I first started, and I couldn't get his suit jacket to fit. He was a little short dude. He was just jacked out of his mind. He was huge, and I could not get his suit to fit him. Find out later that it was a manufacturing issue. I was working with the wrong partner and all that other stuff, but I didn't want to do that at 10 o'clock on a Sunday. That was his schedule that worked for him. And then I knew that I'd have to come home and work till 3 or 4 in the morning and then get up at 6:30 and do it again. But I think the reason that we're fortunate to be in a successful spot is you do things that you don't want to necessarily do, but you believe that they're going to put you to the next level and take you to where you need to go.
100%.
Right?
I mean, that's what it's all about. Like, is you have to go through it. You have to kind of you got to do it. That's the only thing right? Like you said, you got to go to that guy's house at 10 o'clock at night. You have a million other things you'd rather do on a Sunday, but I've been in those spots where it's 10 o'clock at night and it's raining and someone can't get into the Airbnb and I'm in bed and I'm like, well, I gotta go. Let them in. Like, what am I gonna? I can't take care of that tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So, and that's what makes you grow too.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, whatever, like you just do it. It's natural at that point that you don't even think twice about it. You know?
I think you build it into your mental state of, hey, when shit pops up, it is what it is. It becomes part of your life.
Right.
Right. And when you accept that that's what it's going to be. And I think on the backside of wherever we're trying to go with our businesses and our career, the opportunity and the flexibility to do what you want, when you want, then you're now big enough and successful enough to have someone else do something for you, someone trustworthy that they're going to do the same thing that you would have done, and you don't have to sweat it and think about, hey, are they going to miss it? Are they going to drop the ball?
Right.
And going back to your point again about how you took care of your team in situations that are the most dire, well, that's how you end up building those trusting relationships with people that you don't have to worry about them. Oh, I need someone to be there at 10 o'clock. And then all of a sudden you get a 1-star review because that person didn't show up.
Right.
Because that could ruin your business.
Exactly. Or, there's things that come up that it gets missed. The cleaner missed the schedule on the clean. But like having trust in your cleaner when that guest comes and they're like, hey, Corey, this place isn't ready. It's like, okay, let me make a call. And my cleaner is there. Like she would be there and hitting it, and then I just I refund the folks their cleaning fee, and I say, hey, go out, grab a pizza or go out to dinner. Here's your cleaning fee back while we get this place ready for you. So
you're willing to give up a little bit.
100%. I mean, it's my bad. Like I made the wrong. Like the buck stops with me. Like, okay, the cleaner didn't make it there, but ultimately I didn't go double check her. or him or whoever was there. So I'm gonna take care of that guest. Hey, it's a husband and wife. Go out to dinner. Here's your $100 cleaning fee back. I'm not sweating it because they'll feel good then.
Right.
Like, hey, the place wasn't ready. I apologize. We missed it on the schedule. Those things happen. Go to dinner and enjoy a dinner with your wife on me, and hopefully that resonates with them enough that they're gonna understand and leave me a good review.
And most people are genuine enough to understand that you're always going to have an asshole that doesn't matter. You can go above and beyond, and they're still going to be pissed off. That's human nature, right?
Yeah,
right? So you just have to kind of have that as an expectation on how things may go. But I guess one thing, and I know from our conversations, stories and whatnot, is there anything you're able or willing to share from a horror story standpoint or an absurd standpoint, or obviously things are going really good for you, but is there something out there that you remember an experience that was like, holy hell, this is what I'm getting into, whether it's the Airbnb, the rentals, things of that nature, or is there any like outlandish story that you had with a guest or anything like that? Anything you're willing to or interested?
You kind of put me on the spot with this one.
You don't have to answer it. I have a couple that I really enjoyed, but they're not with anybody's names or anything, so it's up to you, like, though.
What
the credit card one and
oh yeah. So I mean, with a couple things, I guess. With the pandemic, unfortunately, with the Airbnbs, like a lot of times we get people coming in from out of state. The calendars are booked out. Well, now the calendars were open, so we had a lot of issues with people partying. They're renting the house. They're booking it on a Thursday, Friday to get that 2-night weekend minimum, and they're getting a deal on a Thursday, and then they're inviting all their friends over and throwing some crazy party at my house, which that's not what I want.
Right.
And like, that's kind of the with Airbnb prior to the pandemic, I didn't have that issue. I didn't even think about that issue. And now with it's not enjoyable to decline someone's request to book my house. But when you're from Pittsburgh, don't have any reviews, and you're 23 years old, like, what else are you staying at my house for, right? But yeah, we did have a crazy story. So this guy, he came through. It was January, so it was slow time, and he came through. Not Airbnb, VRBO, and he calls me up. He's
and that's a competitor of Airbnb. It's just
it's another platform. Right. Yeah, or Vrbo they go by now. And he's Eastern European, and he gets checked in or whatever. And then after a couple weeks, he hits me up. He's like, "Hey Corey, can you come over and talk to me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I go over there. He's like, "I really like this place. I want to stay. Like, let me know. I'd rather just pay you directly. So let me know what the rent would be, right?" And so I check my numbers. I let him know, and the next day he's like, "Okay, come on over." It's like the friendliest guy, just like so friendly. He welcomes me. He's like, "Oh, you." It's kind of weird too, because it's my old apartment he's staying in, and he's like welcoming me into his home, which was formerly my home, right? Yep. So he gives me the money, and he's like, count the money. He's like, even my brother I make count the money in front of me. No, that way we're both good. I'm like, okay, like totally get it. So I count the money. It's all good. So he stays with me for like a couple months, and he's the friendliest dude. Like, he came over to my house and brought my kids like clothes, like, and I'm like, "What's your business?" And he's like, "Oh, I go to like Marshalls and TJ Maxx, and I buy like the discounted name brand stuff, and I own a store in Rome, and I ship it back to Rome." And I'm like, "All right, I guess you can make a margin on that. Like, they like Nike and Adidas over there, and you're getting it cheap. Like, okay, cool. Like, that's sweet, right?" He's like showing me a picture of his kid and his family. And so there was a random weekend. It was like Pitt graduation or Robert Morris graduation. Then he had to move out of the house because I had someone else book it, and he didn't tell me far enough in advance. So he went and stayed at my buddy's house. Well, the toilet clogs, right? So I get my plumber over there, and it was funny that the kid staying there at the time, he just sends me a picture of the toilet with the bowl with the lid closed, and I'm like, "Dude, what's going on with the toilet? Like, what is this picture?" And so it's clogged up. So my plumber goes over, and he pulls out cut up credit card, like cut up not credit cards, but like debit cards or gift cards. And I'm like, please don't throw stuff down the toilet, whatever. So, Janos, the guy, he moves back in, and then I move him around to like another 1-bedroom spot. He's like, no, this is too small. And like there was like always this Eastern European like bald dude in the back, like just like brolic, like kind of looking mean, like he was like
with him.
Like they were like barbecuing in the back one day, and I'm like, what's up? And he's just like grunted at me, and I'm like, this is my house. And then he got a little more friendly, but like I'm like, okay, whatever, like do your thing, have your barbecue. So Janos moves on. Like it was the summertime at that point, and I'm like to my buddy, I'm like, hey, I got this guy. He's a great dude. He pays me cash every month, no problem. So he moves into my buddy's place down in Carnegie. Well, I'm sitting on my front porch on a Friday morning, drinking my coffee, and all of a sudden it's at Plymouth Street, which is a duplex, and the guest is like, Corey, the FBI just kicked in the door. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, did they have paperwork? And I'm like, I'll be right over. And like, I walk into my house.
And you're only a couple miles.
I'm a mile away, right? Like 5 minutes. I casually walk into my house, and I'm like to my wife, I'm like, the FBI's at Plymouth Street. I got to go. Because like if they're coming for me, they know where to get me. So I'm like not that worried that I did anything. So I go in, and there is a warrant for Plymouth number 1. Now this dude was staying on Plymouth number 2. So there's a warrant, and I read it, and it was like credit card skimming devices and all this other stuff. And I apologized thoroughly to this girl, and she like sent me a picture, and I still have the warrant today at my shop. It's like up on the wall because I find the humor in the situation.
Of course.
And I immediately call my buddy where this guy was staying. I'm like, dude, the FBI just busted into Plymouth Street. Like, you better call them and let them know because they're looking for this dude. So the guy had booked out of his place already, and was up north. And the end of the day, the guy he came here on an asylum visa, and then he's just started running these credit card schemes up in between here and Erie, and was like skimming credit cards and everything else. It's wild, right? Like,
yeah. So business, right? Business is the same as life, where you never know what's going to happen. You never know the experiences, the situations you're going to run. And, you have to find humor in a situation where it's turmoil, right?
Right.
Because, then you're worried about the girl that's living there or staying there. What type of review is she going to leave you?
Yeah.
Which obviously I think that's a different situation.
Yeah.
But again, there's outside influences and instances that you can run into that you have no control over. But that stuff like that, they're good stories that you could pass on and you tell throughout your entrepreneurial endeavors and all the other stuff. So, no, that was one of my favorite ones. I was hoping you would be willing
that's a good one
to share that, because those stories, I'm sure a million other business owners, entrepreneurs have not the same exact one, but something that's just so crazy and outlandish and and situational. So, we appreciate you having you on, Corey. I want to make sure this is beneficial for you, and I think you definitely drop a lot of information to people. Where can people find your business? Are you looking to buy homes from people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always looking. I'm a realtor, so if anyone's looking to buy or sell, certainly I can help there.
And we'll put your information in the notes and everything as well from the episode.
And then obviously, if you're coming to Pittsburgh, I got plenty of spots all around I like to think they're pretty cool. Or if you're thinking of selling a house, or you have something that you don't know what to do with, I'm happy to help and take a look at it.
Cool. So leave us, just an overall, man, your feeling, your thoughts, the last 5 years, 7 years in a nutshell. To anybody that may be day one where you and I were years ago, expectations, mindset. Give them a little bit of nugget on the way out the door for you on what to expect, how to get through things, and how to be successful and get to where you are in honestly a really short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is work hard, have fun with it, and you got to get better every day. Like that's 1% improvement every day. Like even if you're reading 10 pages in a book, like just soak up everything you can, talk to everyone that you can that's ahead of where you are, even if they're just a little bit. Because everyone has knowledge, and success leaves clues. So, like, those are the things that are paramount to having that success is just following in the footsteps of people, and everyone's business is slightly different. But like, as you grow as a business owner and as you grow your knowledge base, you become better and you're able to make decisions that allow your business to grow.
Yeah. So, leaving you guys with a couple pointers here. I mean, this episode was awesome. Not only just because of our friendship, but, we paralleled timing, being in business and starting business and all that other stuff together. So Corey's been one of the joys for me to watch. And I've learned a lot from him, from business standpoint, running ideas to him, things of that nature. And, at the end of the day, you're always going to learn stuff. You're fail, win, lose, whatever. You learn more from the losses, just the cliche sayings that there typically are. And you're always going to be able to improve. And I think the one thing is it's not a marathon, or it is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right?
Right.
And people need to realize that, especially in a world where it's such an instant gratification world. There's no such thing as instant gratification. Anybody that I know that's been successful in business massively quickly, or either a tech company, which I don't know too many people personally that are in that situation, or they're people that have had money that started things out, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to get their business growing. And kudos to them, but an entrepreneurial ride is different than a business owner. And so, if you guys have any questions, please reach out to me or Corey. He does an incredible job with what he's done over the last several years. It's awesome to see where it's going. The future is incredibly bright for him and his business, and I appreciate having you on, man. This was a lot of fun. So
thanks a lot. Thanks for
absolutely.
having me. Good to be here.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you checking in, and we'll catch you next week on a different episode.